the state of the college football landscape right now is such that Alabama's got a loss already. Clemson's got a loss already. Texas A&M's got a loss already. And all three of them came as favorites, in many cases solid favorites. So everything's all topsy-turvy. It's like trying to get your spine straight on a waterbed. And then all of a sudden, well, this week we got Ole Miss rolling into Tuscaloosa. We got the Noles rolling into Clemson. We got Auburn headed into College Station. These are losable games. There's pressure everywhere. With Alabama, I cannot stress enough that if you are enrolled at the university right now, you have no clue what it's like to lose. You never have. You never have. You were an infant. You could not feed yourself the last time this team lost 2 games in a row, 2 home games in a row. The last time they were out of contention in September. You don't know that feeling. And I would venture to say a lot of you have hopped on the bandwagon. We don't say that word very loud around here, but I would venture to think a lot of you have hopped on the bandwagon over the last 15, 20 years, and even you don't know what it's like to lose. Out of all the people who could bring the walls crumbling to the ground, Lane Kiffin, this is how this story is going to end? Surely not. Now, for the record, I did pick Alabama to win the game. And I'm going to talk to Kublik about this a little bit later on. But, man, just go down the what-if rabbit hole with me for a second. If it's Lane Kiffin, if it's him, some of you just despise him in Tuscaloosa. Others feel much stronger than that about him. If it's Lane Kiffin, and also, forget about Kiffin. I don't care if it's Meemaw. If someone goes in there and hands you your second L before the end of September, what's the talk? I know what Nick Saban's talk would be, but like you, living in Tuscumbia, Alabama, or living in Muscle Shoals, or Mushoals, as the locals would pronounce it, what do you do? Like, rebuild? What, are you trying to get to the Gator Bowl? Like, what kind of mentality do you adopt? So there's that. Then there's also this really, really ridiculous notion that if I had a saddle would be the burr under it, and that is this whole thing about Nick Saban's legacy. Like, yeah, kids, you could win half a dozen national championships at school, but you have a down year, you dare lose 3 or 4 games, and poof, there goes your legacy. Guess that means legacies don't mean very much if you can dismantle them in a non-scandal related fashion over the span of, 1 month in one season? So that's what I think about that. But yeah, a lot of pressure, not just on Saban. He'll be there next year if he wants to be. Virtually no one else there is safe. And I think I've said it the way I need to say it there. What about the Clemson Tigers? What about Dabo Swinney? We've already broken all these games down. If you want to look at the individual cuts on the YouTube channel, they are there. I would strongly advise you to wait until after the show is over to look at them. So here comes Mike Norvell. Here comes that transfer portal-ridden Florida State roster, and then a riddled Florida State roster. And then there's Clemson with a conspicuous lack of transfer portal-infused talent, which is okay. It's okay, because that's the way Dabo Swinney wants to go about it. And Mike Norvell, it's okay if half your roster's from the portal, because it's legal now. You can do whatever you want to there. But here's the thing. Dabo's taking a really hard stance on this. Mike Norvell has too. They're just polar opposites. Now, you know as well as I do, there are more than one ways to win in this game. I mean, Paul Johnson won at Georgia Tech, and they never threw the ball. So, yeah, there are more than 1 or 2 ways to win, but this is philosophy. Like, this is overarching. This is 50,000-foot stuff. And I told you when Duke beat Clemson, that was bad, but that's a loss. People didn't view that as a referendum game. This is the referendum game. I've told you this since the summer. When Florida State comes in there, if Florida State's able to win, that's big for the ACC. If Florida State is able to roll, then that's kind of a sea change in the ACC, but also that's the moment when the most loyal of Clemson fans will peel the duct tape off their mouths and they will finally question their leader for the first time. I'm not making fun of you guys. I know it sounds a little sarcastic. It is. It's a college football show on YouTube. But I'm serious. You have every reason in the world to be loyal to Dabo Swinney. He's brought you multiple championships. He's elevated that Tiger Paw symbolically to a level it never had been before in anyone's lifetime. Mine, yours, Grandpa's, anyone's. So I don't really say that with forked tongue. But what I do mean is nothing stays the same. Like, the sport doesn't sit still. It wasn't going to sit still for Saban. He had to evolve in the mid-2010s or it would have passed him by. And it's not going to sit still for Dabo. I don't care if he's won 7 of the past 8 conference titles over there. You've seen it moving, and he's seen it moving too. Just the difference is he doesn't feel like running towards it like he runs down that hill. Well, that's all well and good as long as you keep winning. But the moment you stop winning And the moment that that fan base sees that someone else has that belt over their shoulder, and if it's Florida State especially, that's not a one-hit wonder type thing, there are going to be complaints. And I don't think Dabo Swinney's changing. I really don't. And so that's rocking a hard place type stuff for the Clemson program. And look, I picked Florida State. I was talking to a coach today, not involved in this game, just kind of an innocent bystander, and he pumped Clemson up pretty good. You know, he was talking about the way Clemson's perceived versus the way this game is perceived and versus what it actually will be. So there are a lot of folks in the coaching community that don't quite think it's Florida State's time yet, that think Clemson's got a whole lot more in the barrel than the public imagines. I'll have to see it. Now, I said that about Missouri last week, and they went and won a football game. So that doesn't mean anything just because I picked Florida State. I expect a really competitive game. Hey, we'll know by 3:30 Eastern time, won't we? We'll know Saturday. Looking really forward to that. Really forward to it. We're not going to be at the Oregon-Colorado game, but all eyes will be on Eugene, Oregon. This is, I cannot believe, well, I can't believe where we're at. So all-encompassing statement there. Wow to what Deion's done. Wow that this is a marquee game. But even then, still a 3-touchdown line here. Side note, and this is just a word to the unwise, don't refer to point spreads as disrespectful. I told you we had to pay a Deion tax. The Deion tax, for those who did not listen to the last couple of shows, is as blessed as we are to have that dude coaching a major college football program, and as blessed as we are as a college football people to have multitudes, just droves of outsiders coming in the door, they bring with them some pretty casual opinions. And they don't sit in the back and acclimate themselves to the room. They want to talk as soon as they get in here. And so, you know, you hear things. I was listening to some of our peers on another network that shan't be named today, and they called this point spread disrespectful. Guys, girls, don't refer to point spreads as disrespectful, because it's one of the dumbest things you could ever say. If you believe it, go bet it. Go bet it. That's all it is. It's meant to attract your action. You don't look at a point spread. It's inanimate. It doesn't have feelings. An odds maker put it there. If a sandwich sits here, I'm not going to call it tasty. I'm going to eat it. If a point spread is disrespectful, go take advantage of it. You're not, are you? Because you know what Oregon's capable of doing. You know that the steam could run out of this engine for Colorado, or maybe it doesn't. That's why God has us play the games instead of just, draw it up on paper. But there's pressure on Dan Lanning. As much as people are talking about Deion, right now, playing Colorado is the biggest stage this sport has to offer. I want to repeat that for those of you who have been in the hospital and you just got resuscitated, brought back to life. Maybe you came to and you don't know what's happened over the past year. I'm going to say it again slowly for you. Welcome back. Hope you heal up soon. Colorado's the center of the college football universe. Deion's the coach there. And playing them now puts you on the biggest stage the sport has to offer. Well, what does that mean for Dan Lanning? What does that mean for Bo Nix? There are going to be points to be had, plays to be made. And if I turn this game on and it's 27-all late in the fourth quarter, Colorado is the immediate story. But you know how folks will start talking about Lanning? It'll be ridiculous. But you know how folks start talking about Lanning? Because you will still have at Washington. You'll still have Washington State at home. You'll go to Utah. You got Southern Cal still to go. You got Oregon State on Black Friday. You still got all those games. You couldn't even beat Colorado? That's what the talk will be. Yeah, there's pressure up there. There is immense pressure in College Station, Texas. Big pressure Saturday. Has Fox trademarked this yet? Can we get this one? Or do they have that one as well, Jesse? So big pressure Saturday is extra big time in College Station, Texas, because again, conference play starts. Auburn comes to town, but there's that blemish. It's like you're 14 years old again. There's that blemish, and it's Miami. And they really kind of skull drug you, didn't they? And all of a sudden, yeah, it wasn't a conference game, but you enter into conference play with a loss on your resume, and if you lose another one, you're just another poverty team. You're just 2-2. Like, big deal. Who are we talking about here? We're talking about Texas A&M. We're talking about a team that was a dark horse to compete with or maybe even overtake the LSUs or Alabamas of the world in the West. We're talking about, and still are, a top 5 talent roster in this sport. And they're going to be 2-2? Well, we can't have that. And the locals out there are already waiting for the next slip up. I can't even imagine what Texags would look like after the dust settles. If Hugh Freeze goes in there with a totally reportaled roster, their leading receiver has yet to top the 200-yard mark, and he goes in there and attacks that DJ Durkin secondary, and they come out of there with a win, I don't care how, uncomfortable times at Texas A&M. I'm going to be in South Bend, Indiana. I'm going to watch Ryan Day take Ohio State in there. And again, undefeated Ohio State, JP poll number 1 rated Ohio State. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because if Kyle McCord and that offense don't just up and down the field, if it's 21-10 shoes on the other foot, as it was last year, if Notre Dame gets the job done here, it doesn't matter how high a level the game's played at. Doesn't matter if Notre Dame's flawless in their execution and you just tip your cap to them. Some fans will not be happy with that because here's their reasoning, and they're not wrong. We're Ohio State. When we play our B-plus or better game, no one should really be able to just out-execute us or out-talent us because that should be good enough. Road, home, don't care. And I get the standard. It's a little steep, but I get the standard. And also, in that little scenario there, if Ohio State were to lose Saturday, it's not like they have a murderer's row of a schedule. They're currently the 3rd odds-on favorite to win it all, by the way. But you would start looking down the road, and I think a lot of people would say, well, if they couldn't beat Notre Dame, they're not going to Michigan. They're not beating Michigan. Now, that's independent of how Michigan looks the rest of the way. But I know that would happen. And I got one more for you before we move on. Let's go right back to the Palmetto State. South Carolina's already got a couple of losses. Now, most fresh in your memory is not that North Carolina debacle anymore. Most fresh in your memory is they led Georgia 14-3 at the half last week, didn't they? Well, they got run out of the building in the second half. I thought it was a really strong game from them, but now here comes Mississippi State in. And Mississippi State looked filtered through a jockstrap last week, horrifically bad. And yet they go to Columbia, and it's not even a 7-point spread. That's with home field baked in. You're telling me as an odds maker, basically a field goal separates these teams on a neutral field. No South Carolina fan, if Spencer Rattler plays remotely capable ball, thinks that Mississippi State hangs within 3 points of them on a neutral field. Now, is it disrespectful as a point spread? I don't know. Go bet it if you think so. But if Shane Beamer loses that one, he's a 3-loss coach already before September's out. And Colin, I know we just started showing this beautiful B-roll. Could we look at that South Carolina schedule for a second? Because unlike Ohio State, they do still have multiple very, very high speed bumps. And you start to ask yourself, well, we still got to go to Tennessee next week, and we still got Florida coming in here. Then we got back-to-back at Missouri. They suddenly look good. Then we go to Texas A&M. We got Kentucky and Clemson in here to round out the year. Are we going to make a bowl? We're not going to be favored the rest of the way. Are we going to make a bowl? And then people start asking themselves, have we peaked as a program? Was this just smoke and mirrors? Why don't we have anything other than this transfer portal quarterback in Spencer Rattler? Well, I'll tell you why. It's hard to build a roster. It should not look as easy as the Lincoln Rileys of the world made it look, because it's not. And that's an SC that's a long way away. The one on the East Coast over here, progress is not linear. I've tried to explain this. You don't go 7 wins, 8 wins, 9 wins. Sometimes you may go 9 wins, 7 wins, 10 wins, 8 wins, 11 wins. Well, that's progress. It's just a little herky-jerky. It's not always linear.